It is the 2nd of January 2014. I'm glad that you're watching Citizen TV. This is Citizen at 1. My name is Willis Saburu. And our top story this hour, at least 10 people were injured when attackers hurled a grenade into a popular nightclub in Diani in the south coast. The incident occurred at 3:30 a.m. at the nightclub frequented by tourists. The attackers are said to have fled on a motorcycle.
Attackers targeted the Tandoori bar in Diani in the early hours of Thursday when it was still crowded with revelers celebrating the New Year holiday. At least one of the 10 victims was seriously wounded and had to undergo surgery. According to eyewitness accounts, the attackers were on a motorcycle and fled after hurling the grenade. There has been no claim of responsibility for the attack.
We are very alert that we have intensified patrols in the south coast. The security in the south coast is on the high gear.
The incident is one of a series of grenade blasts. 2 tourists traveling between Diani and Mombasa escaped unharmed in December 2013 after a grenade thrown at their vehicle failed to explode.
I was shooting pule, and then all of a sudden there was this huge blast. So I lay down. That's when after 1 minute, I jumped out, stepped on the road, and then came back to check on my friends. And then after that, we took our car and we fled to a nearby hospital.
Tukateremka chini, tukaanza kutembea na tumbo mpaka tukatoka nje. Mimi sikujua, by that time sikurealize kama nimeumia. Sasa kufika kule nje ndio nikakuta kiatu iko na damu.
Police say investigations into the incident are still underway. Salim Bilu, Citizen at 1.
Now, the United Nations now says both the government agencies and rebels fighting in South Sudan have committed terrible acts of violence. UN Special Representative for South Sudan, Hills Johnson, says there was evidence of ethnic targeting even as fighting continues. This comes a day after President Salva Kiir declared a state of emergency in Unity and Jonglei states ahead of the Addis Ababa peace talks between representatives and warring factions.
Terrible acts of violence were committed by both sides engaged in the South Sudan fighting, the UN has now said, with its special representative to the country pointing to evidence of ethnic targeting between the Dinka and Nuer.
I've seen terrible acts of violence in the past 2 weeks. There has been killings and brutality, grave human rights violations and atrocities committed. We have seen evidence of apparent ethnic or targeting of South Sudanese citizens on ethnic grounds. This can lead to a perpetual cycle of violence that can destroy the fabric of the new nation. We need to do everything possible to prevent such a cycle of violence between the communities of South Sudan.
Delegates from both sides, that of government and sacked Vice President Riek Machar, have arrived in Ethiopia's capital Addis Ababa for peace talks. Fighting between government troops and militia loyal to Machar continued in Bor, Jonglei's capital, and the UN says the crisis could stretch beyond its resources. Jackie Maribe, Citizen at 1.
Now, on 31st December 2013, a self-confessed serial poacher surrendered to authorities in Isiolo County. The former employee of Lewa Downs Conservancy revealed how he organized the killing of animals under his care. 39-year-old Keleshi Parkusa also surrendered a gun and 10 rounds of ammunition at a public forum organized by the Lewa Conservancy and Kenya Wildlife Service. Elders, county administrators and the police witnessed this event. His latest slaughter was on 12th December 2013 when he and his 2 accomplices used their illegally acquired gun to shoot dead a huge rhino in the Conservancy. Ian Craig, a shareholder of the Conservancy and a member of the KWS Board of Trustees, termed the killing as most unfortunate, noting that the felled rhino was the biggest the 30-year-old Conservancy has ever witnessed. Now, poachers have killed 7 rhinos in the Conservancy in 2013 alone. Could the move see the decline of rhinos killed in the Conservancy?
Naogopa sana. Na saa hii nimeapa kwa Mungu, hii makosa sitarudia. Hata nimewasha, sitarudia. Nimefanya makosa, na sitarudia. Hakuna mtu ameleta mimi.
Hiyo ni jambo ambayo tutapokea kwa mikono miwili na tuone vile kijana tutasamea tukifuata sheria, kwa sababu si mnajua iko sheria. Hatusemi tutamfunga na hatusemi tutamwachilia, tutaangalia vile sheria inatukubalia sisi wenyewe tusijifunge, halafu tufanye kazi pamoja.
This is the worst year that we've ever had in the last 30 years in the killing of rhino. I believe that we've probably lost over 5% of our rhino by the time that the year is finished.
Well, we certainly hope this trend continues, where people come in and surrender, and that the trend of poaching comes to an end. Now, Machakos Senator Johnston Muthama is accusing the government of what he calls planning to misuse public funds through two projects, the standard gauge railway and the laptops for primary schools. The senator, together with the Matungulu MP Stephen Mule, said it was wrong for the government to commit an equivalent of 1/3 of its entire revenue for the two projects. The two leaders further faulted the appointment of what they refer to as political rejects to head state corporations.
Wakenya hawa mahitaji yao sio kama yako na ya Muthama. Hawa yao ni hali ya chini, na wanataka viongozi warudi chini wasikilizane na wao. Unatumia bilioni 24 kupatia hao watoto kompyuta, waifanyie nini kama wanakaa nje ya njua? Tafadhali, you have to understand the people you are leading. Zile nomination walifanya hatuzitaki, na hatutakubali kamwe kutumiwa kama jamii vibaya. Lazima tusimame, tuongee na tusikike vile tunasema. Siasa duni, maisha mbaya. Siasa panganga, maisha mbaya.
I will be bringing you more on some of those appointments that were made later on in the bulletin. Now, most high-profile careers also happen to be high-pressure jobs, and when your work is to prepare for and run a general election in a highly tense political environment, then the pressure to perform becomes even greater. Ahmed Issa Hassan is the chairman of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. He says managing the March 4th, 2013 general election was a hugely challenging and testing experience. Hassan says the time to prepare for the polls was too short, and some of the most competent commissioners in the interim Independent Electoral Commission were hounded out of office despite the need for their expertise in the newly formed IEBC. He sat down with Citizen TV's Abdi Osman for our Newsmakers 2013 series. Let's take a look.
His face has become synonymous with the polls process in Kenya, but every day IEBC Chairman Ahmed Issa Hassan walks into his office at Anniversary Towers in Nairobi. He remembers with nostalgia the challenging but equally rewarding time he has had in office since he was picked to lead electoral reforms in the country after being named chairman of the Interim Independent Electoral Commission IEBC in May 2009. It was largely an incident-free leadership.
We set the bar very high. We conducted very successfully by elections. We introduced new technology in elections technology, including the result transmission, the piloting of the electronic voter registration.
The IEBC won the confidence of the public, whose faith in the electoral process had taken a beating after the dismal performance of its predecessor, the Electoral Commission of Kenya, in the disputed 2007 polls, which were followed by a wave of post-election violence. Hassan led the organization to successfully conduct 12 parliamentary by-elections and 58 civic elections in the 2010 constitutional referendum.
Conducting very successfully the referendum, the yes and no, where actually the no team considered defeat 48 hours before we announced the results.